What do you think life would be like if you suddenly happened upon some missing treasure from the Federal Reserve? Or perhaps being a mediator for two nations on the brink of war? Among these questions and other things, D&D offers us the chance to look at what life would be like if we were thrown into all sorts of hypothetical situations. Today we're going to dive into the life lessons I've learned from D&D over the years, and why it's brought me some invaluable experiences. So this is going to be the first video in a series of life lessons from fiction. We'll end up covering all forms of fiction, from movies to books. We'll cover things like Star Wars, Spider-Man, and Dragon Ball, so stay tuned for that. By the way, if you're enjoying this content, feel free to hit the subscribe button. So here's a quick breakdown of D&D for those of you that have never played. Dungeons & Dragons is a decision-making role-playing game. Essentially, the way it works is you have a player who controls the world. We call this person the DM or Dungeon Master. This person controls the entire world, from the environment that you exist in to the non-player characters that you interact with. Now, as a player character, you have the opportunity to do pretty much whatever you like, within reason. And just like the real world, you have natural advantages and disadvantages to your character. When making a decision or attempting to do something, you have to take those into account with a little bit of chance, which we do by rolling. The DM takes all of these things into account, and the world moves and reacts to whatever it is you're trying to do. So it's no secret that D&D doesn't pull its punches. And right away, the lessons start being thrown at you with something called character creation. Now, at the beginning of any game, you're required to create your own character. This person can be from any walk of life, be any age or gender that you choose. And you yourself get to decide what their entire backstory is. What is their identity? What are their moral values? And what types of interactions have they had throughout their life? As you're going through the early stages of the game, it's very advantageous for you to find out what kind of character you are playing and who are the characters around you. Because you are not making the decisions, and it's your original character, the game challenges you to consider their own decision making and the viewpoints of your own character and the characters of the party. By the simple fact that you need to reflect upon these things, D&D encourages you to be a lot more sympathetic and empathetic, as you share in all of these experiences with your party and come to understandings and make compromises with each other. Now, of course, we could go on about how advantageous it is to understand the people around you, as of course, people will always be in your life, and understanding them can only help you coexist better. But we'll get more into that shortly. Now, as I mentioned earlier, D&D likes to throw a lot of ethically puzzling situations at you. And depending on the way they unfold, they could have a lot of real in-game consequences. Let me give you an example that happened with me. So my party and I were hired to take out an underground network of witches. They worked for an enemy faction, and it seemed simple enough. The issue is, when we got there, we found out that one of the witches worked at a convent, and they were the nun in charge of raising and taking care of the youth. Now, after further investigation, we found out that there was no tomfoolery going on. All of these kids really respected the nun, and they looked up to her, and they were being raised properly. Now, the question we had was, do we take out the nun and potentially leave these kids homeless and starving, or do we just fail our mission? Now, we didn't have too many other options because we were in enemy territory, and trying to fix the problem would not go well for us. So what would you do? I was very for trying to talk things out with the nun. Unfortunately, there was a misunderstanding, and one of my party members just torched the entire place. The children and the nun went up in flames. They were then raised from the dead and perished again, so their souls are forever lost, and that was the end of it. Not our proudest moment, but life is a shit show, and we move on. So it's no secret that D&D is a collaborative form in and of itself. You have you and your entire team working together, and of course you also have to work with the Dungeon Master as you progressively build the story together. Now, a lot of the time you have to come to a compromise with your party and the DM. Sometimes it's over loot, other times it's over making the best decision. However, over time, hopefully you and your team start to form a tight bond and foster a sense of trust. I think the best example of this is a time when me and my friends decided to do the forbidden and split the party. Now, of course, I'm not suggesting that you do this, but at this point in time, our party was tasked with capturing a castle, and we knew each other's capabilities well enough to decide that each of us should have a certain task to perform, and we split up, got everything done, and reassembled in time to fight the boss, which was crazy. Somehow we managed to pull that off. But there are times where it goes horribly wrong. There was a time in another campaign where we were tasked with infiltrating a wizard's keep, and all of us had different ideas about how to do this. Now, we tried, very, very terribly to put pieces of all of our plans together. And unfortunately, by over-compromising, all of us were left exposed. We ended up losing a party member, and more than half of us should have died. So it just goes to show that you're gonna live and learn how to deal with taking on tasks as a team, and they're not always gonna go right. But the better you work together, the better things usually will go. So the last thing I want to go over is communication, because communication is key in all things, but especially in D&D. Wording things properly can be the difference between you actually getting something done and needing to roll something absurdly high just to get a simple task done. For example, if you're seeking safe passage, it's probably in your favor for you to be polite, or you could just leave it up to chance and say, "Oi, give us a ride then," and hope your smuggler's in a good mood. I've had a lot of fun playing D&D over the years, and I think that it is a great tool for building teamwork, learning communication, and just putting yourself in interesting moral dilemmas. That's everything for me. I hope you had a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun talking about D&D. If anyone's interested, I have a bunch of stories that I wouldn't mind sharing, but that'll be it for now. Take care, and as always, have an awesome time.